special place down on the level of the solar plexus where the longer you can keep your mind at that point, then the more quickly it will recharge itself and become free of the thoughts that tend to dog the mind the whole of the time. So how exactly would you get your mind to go there? Generally, the mind or the awareness is not something we can see easily, but we can see or detect at least the objects within the mind. And objects in the mind might consist of things like pictures that you imagine with your mind's eye. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that you were to imagine a picture of the sun shining. Can you think of that? Yeah? Maybe not today, but or a star, or a full moon, or a diamond, anything else that comes easily to you. And what you do is bring the picture to that point inside you, down at your solar plexus, so somewhere on the level of your diaphragm. If your mind wanders off from that point, then you just bring it back again to the picture. If the picture disappears, you can conjure up a new one, and little by little you become more adept at keeping your mind where it needs to be. It may not be exactly at that point, it might be somewhere within you that is more comfortable for you. But anywhere which feels comfortable is generally a good place to start. Anywhere within the body, ideally, or it could even be outside the body if that is more comfortable for you. Some people are more tactile than visual, in which case you may feel the object instead of actually seeing it. Some people feel the weight and texture of the object. Some people even imagine something like a small piece of fruit, which you can imagine the weight of and the texture of instead of a picture. And sometimes that works quite well because it's difficult to force a feeling, whereas sometimes people try to do the mental equivalent of staring at a picture inside their mind, which is generally not that good for the meditation practice. As for the other possible problem which comes up in meditation for beginners, that is the thoughts working on over time. Sometimes you can focus quite well in a particular place in your body, but you have a lot of thoughts coming in and interrupting that process. And generally for meditation, meditation tends to happen when there are few or no thoughts in the mind, so we try to reduce the number of thoughts where possible. One way of reducing the thoughts is to pay them no attention, in which case they will gradually settle like sediment settling out of some muddy water. If it's left to settle for long enough, then you get clear water again. But for some people that isn't very effective, and they need something a little bit more stringent to work with the number of thoughts in the mind, in which case you may try something known as a mantra. And in this tradition, we tend to work with the Indian word Samma Arahang. You'd hear those words going constantly through your mind over and over again, not out loud, but just hearing them resonate in the mind as a way to cut through the thoughts. And you might substitute in your own words if you feel happier with those. So that is in the case that the thoughts are getting out of hand in your mind. So normally on a Thursday, we sit for about 45 minutes of meditation, and I'll lead you through, but the meditation I have prepared for you today is a little bit more, let's say, elaborate than just the bare bones I just told you, but the basic instructions are in there too. So just follow through and see if you can work with that, with your inner visualization or feeling. And at the end, we do what's known as loving kindness, which means taking what we've built up during our practice and allowing that to spread outwards from our center. So we'll sit through to about 8 o'clock. Yeah. So if you'd like to start by making yourself comfortable for some meditation practice. Which essentially is realigning our mind with the most peaceful place within us. Some people might be sitting on the floor, in which case you'd sit cross-legged. with your right leg over your left leg. If you're sitting on a chair, then it's sitting with your back fairly straight. And the ideal way to put your hands is with your right hand on top of the left hand, your hands palm upwards in your lap, with the index finger of your right hand touching against the thumb of your left hand. And at this point you can close your eyes very gently. You might close your eyes as if you're just half closing them, almost as if you are closing your eyes to go to sleep. Never squeeze your eyes closed, and make sure there's no pressure around your eyes. And although we've adopted the ideal body posture for meditation, we might take a few moments just to check down through our body, to be sure that each and every muscle in our body is as relaxed as possible. So starting at the top of our head, scanning down through the whole of our face, relaxing the muscles as we go, relaxing our jaw, our neck, and letting our shoulders drop to their natural height. Just letting any tensions go. Relaxing both arms, forearms, hands and fingers, until the way our hands rest in our lap is as light and gentle as possible. Continuing on down, we relax the whole of our torso, chest, trunk and abdomen, especially the muscles across our tummy. And then we relax both legs, all the way down to our feet and our toes. If you notice any knots of tension remaining, we do our best to relax them as far as possible. Till our whole body feels ideally light in weight, possibly as if it has disappeared or melted away into the atmosphere around us. And at this point we can turn our attention to relaxing our state of mind. Also part of our pre-flight check before the meditation itself. So putting our mind in a positive mood, as if our whole mind were filled with happiness and joy. As if within us felt bright and clear, free of any worries or anxieties. No worries about anything at all. Letting go of any baggage that you have brought to the practice. Filling the mind with positivity. So that your whole mind feels buoyant. And you might imagine that inside your body is just a hollow cavity, as if you were sitting alone in empty space. Your body were just a transparent shell, completely empty inside you. Or perhaps as if your body had been transformed into a sort of transparent bubble with nothing on the inside. As if your whole body had become nothing but a delicate surface. And within this empty space of our body, this personal space of ours, we remember back to that visual image or tactile object which we imagined a few moments ago. This time letting it float gently downwards within the space of our body until it reaches a point somewhere around about the center of our abdomen. At our solar plexus, or as we sometimes know it in our tradition, the seventh base of the mind, about 2 finger breadths above the level of the navel. But in starting out in the meditation, it's always slightly approximate, because the mind really needs to settle to a point of stillness, to see the actual center of the body clearly. But in practice, we just approximate to this point, focusing our attention anywhere in the area of the stomach, giving the exact position the benefit of the doubt for now, picking anywhere that feels right for us. And later, as the mind settles more, it will gravitate to where it needs to be, all on its own. If we feel the need to anchor the mind in place, then we might conjure up some sort of inner image or an object we can feel in that place that feels comfortable for us, holding the attention in place as continuously as we can, for as long as we can, avoiding letting the mind slip away anywhere else if we can help it, but bringing it back each time if it should wander. If thoughts come up in the mind, we do our best to ignore them, and generally they will die down into silence all by themselves. If we feel the need to use a mantra as a mechanism to block the thoughts in the mind, then we might make use of that traditional phrase, Samma Arahang. Samma Arahang. Samma Arahang, over and over again, with the source of the sound coming up again from the center of our stomach, gradually lulling the mind towards a state that is free of any thoughts. And the two things hand in hand, the inner object and also the sound of the mantra if necessary, will help to lead the mind to a place of focus within us while freeing the mind of thought. So we cultivate our mind in this way lightly and gently, using the gentlest possible attention. Little by little, we'll start to pick up on a sense of increasing quality that comes towards our inner self, by implication spreads outwards towards our quality of life and environment too. Because sometimes meditation is characterized as a little bit selfish, almost as if we were turning our back on the problems around us in the world. But on a deeper level, what we're doing in the mind is like returning something of the benefits of our meditation to the world around us. Not to speak of what loving kindness can do for those around us in the world. But because true peace in the world cannot come about simply by dialogue or debate, or even by disarmament, then meditators have a way of contributing to a state of peace in the world, where people try to be the change they want to see, by bringing peace first of all to their own minds, sorting out the obstacles to peace on the battlefield of the mind, by reducing the impurities there. For now, we look inside ourselves to the true source of peace, captivating the mind at the center of the body by means of our inner object, and also the mantra if necessary. Each to our own practice, now in silence, just for a few more moments now, until we come to time for some loving kindness meditation. onto other things each time you realize. Simply bring your attention back again to the center of your body as before. Bring your attention back to the center of the body for as many times as it takes to build up that sense of continuity between your awareness and that special place at your center. As you continue to cultivate the mind in this way, you find that the number of thoughts become gradually less, with or without the mantra. You find that the gaps between the thoughts gradually become longer, until the gaps between the thoughts become longer than the thoughts themselves. And you start to be able to see through to what lies beneath the thoughts in the mind, beneath that superficial layer of rational thinking. Giving you access to more intuitive places in the mind, the deeper level of the subconscious, the gut feelings, the inner wisdom, until at the point where the thoughts die down completely, we start to have a permanent connection to those deeper parts of the mind. For now, we keep our mind on track lightly and gently, keeping our mind in place with nothing more than a feather-light touch. Each to our own practice for a few more moments now, until we come to the appropriate time. So we continue to keep our mind on track at the center of our body the whole the time. Always at the center of whatever inner experience we have built up for ourselves as a result of the meditation so far today. For some people, the meditation will amount to a sense of well-being at the center of the body, in which case we place our mind gently at the center of that feeling. For others, it might be a sense of subtle illumination at the center of ourselves, in which case we bring our mind to the center of that illumination. For others, it may be more like imagery, pictures large or small in the mind. In the same way, we can come to the center of that picture by touching with the very gentlest of awareness, almost like new fallen snow touched with a warm fingertip. The inner experience will melt away at the point of contact, spreading outwards, whether it be light, whether it be a feeling of well-being, whether it be a gradually enlarging inner image. This process of spreading from the center of our body we refer to as the spreading of loving kindness. When at this point we allow the loving kindness to spread outwards to fill the whole of our own body, the wish that we be well and happy, the wish that we be free from suffering. Suffusing the very fiber of our being with a sense of well-being and light, coolness and clarity. And from there we allow the same feeling of loving kindness or visualization of loving kindness to spread outwards beyond the boundaries of our own body, out into the room around us, out into the building around us, outwards into the neighborhood and perhaps beyond, encompassing all the living beings in its path, in ever-widening circles, and reaching out to those living beings with the wish that those living beings be well and happy, free from suffering, live together in peace and harmony. In this way we can extend our loving kindness in ever-widening circles with a sense of brightness, with a sense of compassion, outwards to our fellow beings, across all the countries and nations, whole continents, across the entire face of this planet, in a way that encourages a sense of real peace in the world. And in terms of our fellow travelers on this spiritual path, we might also make affirmations in our mind, resonating with the same sense of peace and harmony. May I be encircled by love and peace and wisdom. May I be surrounded by loving, caring friends and family. May only good and wonderful things be attracted into my life. May I add value to the others in my life, thereby bringing joy and fulfillment for those others in our lives. We feel a sense of gratitude for all the things, people, and experiences that are beneficial in our life, recognizing the influence of those things. And in terms of our spiritual quest, we can reflect upon the importance of topping up our own spiritual inspiration, to find time each day for quiet contemplation, for our own restoration and renewal. To connect with the wise inner part of ourselves, while being filled with a sense of compassion that reaches out beyond ourselves, to our families, our homes, our colleagues, to the whole neighborhood and municipality, in ever-widening circles, to all sentient beings, those that we can see or those that we are unable to see. May this positive emotion spill over, brush off on the people around us, until our whole world will become better as a result. Because if no single person in the world ever thinks of anything but their own selfish desires, then the future of the world will be hard to see. But if each of us cultivate and share the best in ourselves, the best of intentions, words and actions, before long the world will be turned around into a place that's more welcoming and abundant, with opportunities for all. So we extend our loving kindness, our positive energy in this way for ourselves and others for the last few moments of our meditation practice in silence until we come to the appropriate time. Sampe Buddha Balapata Pajeka Nanchayam Balang Arahantananchate Jenara Kambandami Sapaso Sapaputanupavena Sapadhammanupavena Sapasankhanupavena Satha Soti Bhavantu Te. So if you'd like to come to the end of your meditation for this evening, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position before finishing your practice. Far so good, everyone. Not too long, I hope. You had something to focus on as you're practicing? Yeah? So you have something to work with. Yeah. And we turn now to a continuation of a talk which I started on last Thursday, which is to do with living with intention, which is a sort of up-to-date terminology for what is known in the 38 blessings as non-recklessness in the Dharma, which generally doesn't mean a great deal to the uninitiated. But what I explained last time is that for many things to do with living intentionally or living with a non-recklessness, especially in relation to spiritual teachings, this is something which is very helpful for laying the foundation for the mind as one sets off on the sort of higher echelons of the spiritual quest. So earlier on in the 38 blessings, it mostly dealt with aspects of lifestyle, getting things right to minimize the number of worries you might have in your life. But having got all those things in place, then you can start to turn specifically to cultivating the qualities in your mind or in your character that would lead you eventually towards enlightenment. This is number 21 of the 38, so we're sort of getting there. Oh, I got an echo. And last time I really left you with the idea that very central to Buddhist teachings as a whole, there is this sense of everything in Buddhist practice hinging around this idea of reaching towards a place of enlightenment. Some people might call it nirvana, or some people might call it a freedom from impurities in the mind. But another way of putting that is that it is a freedom from complacency as to the value of the spiritual path. So non-recklessness as it concerns the spiritual path. And another name by which you can call that same quality, especially in the Buddhist context, is mindfulness. So really, if mindfulness is understood in the Buddhist context rather than in a more pop psychology context, it actually equates itself with non-recklessness as regards your approach to the spiritual path or spiritual cultivation as a whole. So today I will give a little bit of a contrast between what mindfulness means in the Buddhist context as opposed to what mindfulness has come to mean in the more popular connotations. And mindfulness, I'm sure, is something that you've heard a lot about already. It may be even one of the reasons that you decided to get involved with meditation in the first place, because as far as we can understand it, it's a sort of buzzword for all the benefits of meditation. And mindfulness sort of complements the meditation practice, because meditation is what you'd be doing with your eyes closed on your meditation mat, whereas mindfulness would be what you're doing to keep that practice going as you open your eyes again and go about your daily life in a sort of intentional and mindful way. So the two things hand in hand, or to have everything covered from the point of view of quality of mind, both inside and outside, as it's become known as Mac mindfulness, which tends to perhaps overlook some of the more important features that mindfulness was originally intended to convey. And you might say it's a part of the downside of what sociologists call Western cultural appropriation of the idea of mindfulness. So, what do Buddhists actually say about mindfulness? Sort of fun picture. Buddhists, when they think about mindfulness, especially going back to the roots of the word, regard mindfulness to be a sort of recollection, or a remembering, or a discernment of the difference between things that are good and bad, beneficial or harmful. And the idea of it is to keep you motivated to think, speak, and act in a wholesome way, and not forgetting yourself, and not being distracted by your senses, and always with wise reflection. So this is the original definition of mindfulness. However, since it's turned up in the West, then some Western meditation teachers, we haven't read so much of the original scriptures, sometimes characterize mindfulness as being the quality of bare or undiscerning attention, like going with the flow. And what you often find with so-called Western mindfulness practitioners is that they go around at half speed doing things to make it mindful. Or they might just sit and do nothing and call it mindfulness. And they can feel sort of no meaning of mindfulness. And really, in the true sense of the word, mindfulness shouldn't be just a passive quality. You need to realize that it also requires some effort to cultivate it. Because some Westerners, for example, believe that mindfulness is something that babies and children are born with, because they can also sit there passively and do nothing. So we have to sort of find our inner child by going back to being like that again in order to discover mindfulness. So I'm not sure why it would take some effort to cultivate that. In a traditional context, although mindfulness can sometimes mean observing without judging something, so that bare awareness or unjudging awareness, it can also sometimes mean understanding the true value of something on a deeper level. And mindfulness is actually quite central to many teachings, including that of non-recklessness. Recklessness to you might mean something like running across a highway without looking for traffic first. But in Buddhism, it can mean a lot more than that. It can mean anything that might jeopardize your spiritual path or cultivation. Nonetheless, a little questionnaire which a few of you have had inflicted on you from time to time, courtesy of myself, is that they have tried to define mindfulness in a quantitative way, almost like a psychometric. And some of the things which they talk about, especially on the Freiburg mindfulness inventory, are things like being open to experience in the present moment, being aware of your body while doing other activities, bringing the wandering mind back to the here and now, appreciating yourself, paying attention to what's behind your actions, not judging your mistakes, feeling connected with the here and now. And there's more. Accepting unpleasant experiences, being friendly to yourself when things go wrong, watching your feelings without getting lost in them, pausing rather than reacting to difficult situations, experiencing moments of inner peace in spite of hectic surroundings, avoiding impatience with yourself and others, and being able to smile when you notice how you sometimes make life difficult, presumably for yourself. So, by contrast, the traditional conception of mindfulness is more about uprooting greed or hatred or delusion from the mind. So that needs some generally active effort to be made, and it has 4 qualities. It's supposed to prevent the mind from wandering, because the mind does like to wander after all, like the so-called monkey mind. And through meditation, little by little, we can start to bring it back when it wanders. Even if you have a monkey mind, then the good news is that even monkeys can be trained. In Thailand, they have a special monkey training school in Got Samui and feelings from hijacking the quality of your mind. So let's say you feel angry. You might feel angry occasionally, but you don't let the anger take over and hijack your mind. So anger arises, but you don't let it sort of move in. And you use the mindfulness to remind yourself that you are not your anger. So that's a sort of awareness of what's going on in your mind. If you've got a lot on your mind, then mindfulness will, in theory, prevent the thoughts from proliferating without end. So you have a choice to stop thinking about subjects which you don't want to think about, not just let them run on ad infinitum. And also this idea of not forgetting yourself is often about not getting lost in thought. Being aware in the present moment is maybe a more modern way of phrasing that. For example, some people are washing dishes, and while they're washing the dishes, instead of focusing on what they're doing, they are thinking something completely different, like, oh, what am I going to do when I finish washing the dishes? Because this task is boring and meaningless. And without mindfulness, generally you don't actually enjoy washing dishes very much, because your mind is never actually focused and you are washing the dishes. So as a result of that, you may make a bad job of washing the dishes, you may drop things, the dishes may not get actually very clean. But if you focus on what you're doing until you have actually finished it, before turning your focus of change anything in your life. So these are 4 traditional properties of mindfulness. As for the benefits, again, traditionally, these tend to come from, and I'll go in more colloquial language, by being mindful, you can set up a sort of barrier between how you feel physically and how you feel mentally. So, if your body is in pain or discomfort, if you have mindfulness, it's like you have a little buffer zone between what your body is feeling and how it makes you feel. So you don't let the physical discomfort seep through into the mind in a way that's going to ruin your day. And as you can imagine, it can take some practice, but some people who practice it to the full have found that even if they are in severe or chronic pain, they can actually use the mindfulness quality to reduce the painkiller dosage which they have to take to control the pain, for example. Secondly, you don't get stuck so much in selfish or blinkered perspectives, but instead you tend to see the bigger picture. And thirdly, you have more penetrative insight into the roots of a problem, so that you're not just dealing with the symptoms of a problem, but you can actually see what has caused the problem. That's the sort of thing we mean by wisdom, coming together with mean by wisdom. Keep on mopping up the water, or do you look for where the pipe is leaking? So The wisdom part would lead you to look for the source of the leak. And finally, it gives a sense of self-purification, so overcoming greed, hatred, delusion in the mind, whatever you think, say, or do, in order that whatever you're doing, it's somehow helping you to become a better person as a result. Functions, mindfulness, jungle, then you just like, mindful, yay, cobra, be mindful. But the monk said he surprised himself. One day he was feeling very mindful, and he realized the danger of being so close to a cobra. So he ran away. And that is probably closer to the true meaning of mindfulness than saying, oh wow, a cobra, that's never seen one up this close before, Yeah? So a little difference between the sort of mindfulness and traditional mindfulness. So you can see danger even in small things or seemingly insignificant things. Secondly, it helps you to see where the line needs to be drawn beyond which risky behaviors or damage may start to occur, which exists in nearly every issue you deal with in life. So, like, for example, you might want your children to be happy, but you don't want them to take pleasure in things that may be dangerous to them. Yeah? So you need to draw a line somewhere. And mindfulness helps you to establish where that line needs to be in the best of worlds. Some people start out doing something which they enjoy at first, but if they have mindfulness and then realize if this is something I have to do every day, then maybe I need to pace myself. Because they see themselves in responsibilities, or your responsibilities change, then an awareness of those responsibilities which you have would be called mindfulness. So if your status changes somehow, let's say you just, you're newly married or something, then your whole sense of responsibilities and duties would change, I would expect, as a result. And therefore, your awareness of that would also be called mindfulness as well. So that you don't just slip back into your own sort of bachelor pad habits again. And thoroughness, being thorough in everything which you choose to do. If you've ever been a work supervisor, then you realize that people have different levels of thoroughness in what they do. You can see it especially clearly at the end of a day when people are trying to finish things off quickly before they clock out at the end of the day. And some people will make a rush job and usually not a very well done job. But a person who's thorough, they will time themselves to make sure that they finish and make a good job of it by the end of the day, for example. Some metaphors for mindfulness traditionally. Sometimes it's called a supporting pillar, sometimes it's called a big tent pole around which all the other Buddhist teachings were arranged this time last week. From the heart of Buddhism, do good, avoid evil, purify the mind. Remember the one? Starting at 3, going down to Eightfold Path, going further to all the 84,000 parts of the Buddhist scriptures, all arranged around this mainstay of mindfulness or non-recklessness, especially for your sense doors. If you're an adult, sometimes you can see upsetting things and not let it get to you. But if you're a more vulnerable or sensitive person, sometimes you can't manage to do that. And you can't unsee things which have caused you trauma and will continue to cause you trauma every time you're reminded of it. So for those sort of things, it's better that you didn't pick up on those damaging sort of sensory stimuli in the first place. True? So what is the quality that allows you to filter out those potentially damaging things? In Buddhism, the quality it said that you would need would be mindfulness again, acting like a bouncer to keep the potentially damaging things outside before they get in and play havoc with your nervous system. But letting in the good things, of course. Third thing is like an accountant that is responsible for the incomings and outgoings in the mind, especially in terms of the good energy which you can build up for yourself, and a lack of any negative emotions if possible. And in the long-term direction that you intend to go in spiritually, but it may go around in circles. So, waste of energy. And in the same way, mindfulness on a spiritual sort of journey would be something that keeps us going forwards and doesn't let us on his last legs. You've seen pictures like this before? So Buddha wasn't lying down to take a nap, although he may have laid down in that way also to take a nap, but this time it's his deathbed. They have a statue like this in some places in Thailand as well. And some people think, oh, well, the Buddha is a pretty cool guy, just sort of lies around all day, mindful, yay. But in fact, it's the Buddha at the end of his life. And once he was approaching the time when he would enter nirvana for the final time, or as it's known as parinirvana, so final nirvana, he announced to his community of monks that anyone who had any remaining doubts concerning their practice should quickly come and ask their questions, because he only had 3 months left to go. So when they heard that news, many of the followers and even the monks were so sad, and they were grieving in advance and crying. But there was one ascetic, you see in the white, his name was Supata, and he didn't cry, but once he heard that news, he instantly withdrew himself into the forest and meditated. He meditated while walking, standing, sitting, lying down. He meditated while walking, standing. He meditated so that he could train himself in mindfulness the whole time, 24 hours a day. And someone went to the Buddha and snitched on him. And they accused this monk of being disrespectful. As soon as he gets the news the Buddha is going to die, off he goes into the forest and does his own meditation. Doesn't sound very... That might crop up in the course of my practice over this 3 months. So once he heard the real reason, then the Buddha actually praised this monk's answer and said that other monks ought to be following his example, because he has done correctly and he's an example of what is known as non-recklessness. So not just letting the time pass by without full cultivation of the practice. And in fact, not long afterwards, then Supata was able to become fully enlightened, an arahant, and just before the Buddha passed away. And in fact, he was the last known monk to become enlightened before the Buddha passed away. So it might seem like a very high level of practice, maybe not something that is immediately relevant to you, but even on something like a meditation retreat, some people on the retreat know for themselves that they're quite close to making a breakthrough of some sort. And if they know that's the case, then what would be non-reckless for them or mindful for them would be not to waste time chattering or joking around with their fellow people on the retreat, but they might want to spend more time by themselves, engaging in more solitude and practice so that they can secure progress in their meditation and only then return to being their normal gregarious self again. So in conclusion, for mindfulness, to cultivate it, you need to make cultivation of wholesome things or chilling out. A true definition would include things like upholding your sense of conscience and integrity, and also care to see the wisdom in whatever we're dealing with, even in mundane aspects of our lives. When we cultivate meditation, we might be quite proud of ourselves, that we get a warm, fuzzy feeling inside, But if we have a sense of mindfulness throughout the day as well, then we can keep that good feeling going throughout the day, not just during the meditation itself. So mindfulness is something that ideally goes hand in hand with meditation, and it prevents us from sort of proverbially sleepwalking through life, but rather living with intention. So I'll leave you with a few little announcements today. First of which is that if you're new to meditation, enjoyed it today, found it was beneficial, then I would encourage you to meditate further on your own time, trying to make meditation part of your daily routine, maybe by sacrificing 20 minutes of your time each day, maybe first thing in the morning, maybe last thing at night, to practice a meditation. Sit down and practice at a time when you are least likely to be interrupted, and you'll find that that 20 minutes will allow you to go further and further each time. You may have good days, you might have bad days, but have good days. If you feel hazy about the meditation technique, you can fall back on an app which you can download for free onto your mobile phone called MindGem, which has more than 100 different meditation audio tracks which you can listen to from various teachers in our tradition. And it has a timer on it as well to help you sit for the length of time you would prefer to. So still have this remnant of the pandemic, which is online meditations every Saturday between 7 and 8 on British time anyway, where you can hear a wisdom talk and meditate along with the monk via those Zoom coordinates. And on the same coordinates, you can also join full moon meditations. Next one coming up will be on Tuesday, the 8th of November, which happens to coincide with the Thai tradition of Loi Krathong, which is the full moon where they float little candle rafts away on the waters, and we have the theme of floating all your worries away on the waters. So we will make full use of our fish pond once again on that Tuesday evening. But that's also online for those who may be interested to join that at the usual time of 7 to 8:30. And coming up this Sunday, we have the Katina ceremony for this temple here in Woking, where you are encouraged to join in person if at all possible. This time is the first time we haven't done it as a hybrid. We hope that people will actually come back again this year at full strength. Last year we had about 200 people join, so this year we hope it will be more than that, with people coming back maybe who we haven't seen since 2019. But joining is one good way to get all the full benefits of the Katina. So do participate at any time of the day. Eats at the temple. And on the whole day Saturday will be last-minute preparations of various sorts. So really you can come along anytime on the Saturday and help out with something. If you're involved in a particular role in the volunteer team, you might have the chance also to rehearse what you'll be doing on the big day from about 3 p.m. onwards, sort of weather permitting. And you can also make donations for Katina as well. This year, the proceeds of the Katina are going towards building 2 small annexes at the front of the building here. One will be for reception and one for a children's playroom. And you can see perhaps the twin obelisks we have here, which are the symbol of the 2 rooms that have been built. They'll be used as part of the ceremony for those who have sponsored part of those buildings as well. So that's why we have Cleopatra's Needle in stereo and behind us here. Something you normally need to go all the way into London to see. Yes. So for today, I think that is everything I have for you. And unless you have any questions, comments, or feedback for me at this point.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
So may all of you be blessed with happiness, success, prosperity in life, and to be able to attain true mindfulness and non-recklessness in the Dharma in every aspect of your practice now and forevermore.